Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Morning Meta. I am yours truly, Travis Spencer.
And I'm Camilla Crawley.
Camilla, we got a wonderful, wonderful guest today.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yes.
So today we have Olowu Baba Hasanmi Fahimi, and he is a senior priest and founder and chief creative officer at Creative Intelligence Arts Healing, also a community navigator and wisdom keeper at Sacred Land Collective. So I'm really excited for what's to come. I know there's so much that could really be beneficial to the community just to hear about and become aware of, right? But before we get into that, first, I'm going to read our seasonal themes. And these are the themes that are informing our practice. Okay. All right. So we have our first theme here: honoring and nourishing the light within, doing your best, noticing growth, gaining clarity on your true path, and finding meaning in your journey. Our second theme is abundance and manifestation, patiently waiting with trust and confidence for your intentions to reach full manifestation. Next, we have sacred pause, slowing down, being present, and reflecting on what's already here with gratitude before rushing to what comes next. Finally, peace as practice, remembering to appreciate the present and embrace the cycles of life. Now, we have a special way that we're going to start this particular community conversations, and I'm really excited about this for anyone who may not even know what this is or has never experienced it. We're going to start our conversation today with a libation, and we're going to hand it over to Baba Erwin to take us through that.
Thank you. So those who may not be familiar, libation is an ancestral technology where we use water. I have water here. I have a plant off to my right of the screen on the floor here. And we invoke the energies that are always around us, the unseen energies. And this technology is much like flipping a switch when you turn on, in your house, right? It's technology because it works, right? So what I invite everyone to do is really embody these mindfulness pieces that you just mentioned, which is to say, be present wherever you are. Take an intentional, supportive breath. Lift your heart so as to straighten your spine, and be present with all that you're coming with presently, right? Whatever's with you now, there's enough of it. Take a deep breath in, exhale, deep breath in, exhale. And what I'll be doing is pouring this water into this plant and then evoking, using the fire of my speech to evoke the energies of gratitude and the energies of the unseen things that are always around us, to let them know that we are here for their support and we acknowledge the role that they play in our waking life and sleeping life, actually. Okay. We give thanks to Spirit of the North, the South, the East, the West, the Earth, and the sky. Omiteo. Ibashe Ifa. We give thanks to the wisdom of nature. Ibashe Orumila. Ibashe Obatala. Ibashe Orimi. We give thanks to the divine heads, the consciousness of all those watching now, all those watching in the future, all those for whom this will be medicine. Ibashe Baba, Ibashe Yeye, Ibashe Yeye, Ibashe Baba. Ibashe to all of our teachers and our teachers' teachers for teaching us what to do and what not to do. Ibashe, Honorable Agungun, flesh of our flesh, bone of our bone, spirit of our spirit, honorable and elevated ancestors of all those participating, all those currently present, upon whose shoulders we stand. We give thanks for this opportunity. We thank you for the sacrifices that you have made to allow us to get to this point, for the wisdom and medicine that you have shared with us. Continue to whisper to us. Continue to send us signs and symbols that we are on the right path, for your sacrifice has never been in vain. We give thanks to the personifications of forces of nature. We give thanks to Olodumare, the creator, who comes in very different forms For all the names of the Creator, we give thanks. We pray that our time together today may be grounded, may be present, may be edifying for all those who witness, and we may leave here with more than we came with. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Okay.
Ashe.
Mm.
That was beautiful. Thank you kindly for allowing me to do that. I tend to not feel plugged in or present or supported until I do that. So, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And to everyone out there that is watching or listening, here's another example of a grounding, something that, we do each and every day on this channel with you all. So much appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get started, I just wanted to share that I first met you in the beautiful state of Washington during a lovely retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And even there, you shared so much with us. And so it's just been a pleasure to, receive and gain some of your wisdom and have this connection with you over time. And I know, Travis, you can share how your connection as well.
Oh, it's very much the same. We first met to be coming out to the retreat in Washington, which was a wonderful, wonderful experience. It's the highlight of this path that I've been on. So to be here with you today, Baba, to hear from you the wisdom that you carry and that you share, I am grateful and humble. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
The feeling is neutral. At my best, I'm a reflection. So I reflect really fondly on that time. That was a really magical time. I was just talking to B a few days ago about how instrumental that was. Her sort of the way that she put together that team of peoples.
Yes.
So let's get into it. We want you to just share with everyone who you are and your journey up to this point. However much of that you want to share in terms of what led you to where you are now and who you are.
In this moment, that's a really tender question. As you invited me to think about the themes I wanted to talk to, the first one was grief. And I am in a season of deep individual, so personal grief, but also I think we're all experiencing grief in a way that our society doesn't necessarily have a lot of space for, right? There seems to be an energy of inevitable, not just change, but self-determined becoming, right? And for every new version of yourself, let's call it graduation. Let's just frame it inside of graduation, right? It's graduation season, or we just left it, right? So in the West, there's this idea of I graduated, right? There's a big emphasis on the individual, right? But we've all known that if we've witnessed anyone who's even diaper we changed when they were young, right, reach a point where they have achieved a thing for them that we want them to achieve, and we're celebrating their achievement. When that occurs, I think in our kind of collective, individual, connected, energetic, even that person who changed the diaper of the person who's now 17, 20 something, whatever, they're graduating as well, right? Their pride is present, obviously, but what they poured into the graduate and the graduate achieving that things means that their relationship has to shift. So something is dying, something is lost. They're no longer babies, they're no longer dependents, they're no longer, right? They've achieved a thing, right? And I think that we have gotten to a place, I want to say, if that's not being too weird, even evolutionarily, where we have to graduate into something new, right? And it just so happens that it's paralleling for me with the loss of a lot of dear people in my life. And grief is a thing that's on the other side of love, right? The capacity to grieve is directly proportional to how much you loved, and it never goes away, and it transforms. And so I'm not new to loss in that way, the sort of tangible loss. But because I'm a different individual, because I'm graduating in this particular level of evolution that we're in, um, the depth of what grief does, stripping away those things that you just can't, you don't have the energy to perform or to stay inside of, and you only have so much because there's so much being processed. So I start with that because I want to be mindful for myself to not try to run from, escape, or pretend as if I can control this thing that is happening. This necessary breaking open of my heart and my mind and my memory, so as to connect and from a physical cherishing of individuals to a what I call the spirit dance, right? Um, and so I give that caveat to say that I am a child of um, a very long lineage of very, very incredible human beings. Um, and I was born in 1977, without getting too autobiographical, just to place people inside of my cultural context. Um, at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, I'm a first generation to this land, this experiment called America. My uh, paternal and maternal, uh, my parents are both from Guyana, South America, which is right next to Suriname, not Ghana, Guyana, um, between Suriname and Venezuela in South America, the only English speaking uh, country due to the colonial whatever uh, on the South American continent, but is considered part of the Caribbean. My parents came to the United States uh, chasing resources, a thing we call the brain drain, but it was just a migratory pattern that we've all been on for the last 500 years, um, and maybe even before. And I was born in Harlem in 1977, to New York in 1977, right? So all that means, predominantly in the Northeast, for most of my life until I came to the Pacific Northwest for grad school. Come from a massive family, extended family that they call it in the West, but it's all one to me. Um, a very dynamic, beautiful, amazing, perfectly imperfect peoples. And I found my way as an artist almost by survival. Creativity and art saved my life. Um, I wouldn't say I was the black sheep of the family, but I definitely had a sensitivities that were strange to folks that art allowed me to explore. Um, uh, Not just performing arts, but also visual arts, and I'm up for anything that's a transmutative technology. Um, and so my young life was largely as an artist. Went to undergrad at University of the Arts in Philadelphia um, for theater, and continued my education here in the West Coast at University of Washington, also under theater, but theater not for the purpose of being famous, theater because I needed to get better at storytelling and having a space to explore the cultural, what's the word? Contradiction. So to be raised, anyone who's first generation who's watching, or anyone who's raised in a place separate from the place that the people who raised you came up in, there's always a bit of a like in the house they can only do what they know, but then when I go outside it's a whole nother thing, right? So being first generation, in my house was certain smells, tastes, sounds, ways of being, and then I would leave, either go to someone else's house or be in the world and be like, that's not the same, right? But my parents weren't necessarily cultural educators, right? So they couldn't answer my why we do this versus this, or what's this about. And so what uh, storytelling, art, specifically theater, allowed me to do in performance was to really explore worlds, right? And begin to develop better questions and then perform those questions based on scripts or whatever, or devise pieces. And so there was something very dynamic about my capacity to like things that didn't make sense to me. I could actually seek work, or work would seek me, where I could explore those things and have them experientially discovered and then sort of do the difference. But my interest in performance wasn't, again, to be famous, to be in Hollywood. It was really just to explore these questions that I had, right? About why people do what they do, how we do it, why we do it, when we do it, why we don't do it. And that was my life for a very long time, until about 30 years old. And then something happened, and a lot of things happened. And I think I was definitely in a fairly depressed or just not lively space. And I got introduced through a series of fortunate events that I say orchestrated by my ancestors, where I got reconnected with some wisdom keepers or priests within my my kind of biological, or my like genetic sphere, right? So without getting too weird about it, people started reconnecting with people who were rooted in indigenous practices and more spiritually based practices. And it was actually my father who took me to see someone who would have been my grandmother's cousin. Um, and that opened up a world um, of curiosity, right? As I got my first quote unquote reading. And it introduced to me the possibility of this idea of us being spiritual beings having a human experience. I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, I know what it is to be human. Like, I get that. Like, I cry, I hurt, blah, blah, blah. But what is this spiritual being thing? And I feel like me experiencing that reading, um, sparking my curiosity, stepping into doing more mindful rituals or intentional spirit-based technology, began this incredible journey that some years later um, led to me initiating as a wisdom keeper or priest myself. And because I'm so experiential, I don't think I could spell Babalawo really when I became it. Not because I was sort of ad hoc at it. It was because the only Babalawo that I knew, or the only indigenous priests that I knew, were the people that I knew who were taking me to be initiated. And I knew them in the context of how I knew them. So I didn't grow up, even though I was in New York, I didn't grow up knowing about, Santeria or Ifak. I mean, I could think back and I saw people in white, or whatever the case may be, but I didn't know what I was looking at, right? But there was something about the technology, there's something about the way of being, and the information, and the knowledge. I'm a really intellectual person, so I can think through a lot of things. So came up inside of the Catholic space because of the best education, and then after that went to AME, and then all the time was asking questions that traditional Christianity, or at least the brand and the places where I was, didn't really have solid answers for. And so I would quest towards Buddhism, towards Islam, towards meditate, all these things. But I could see or think through, like, oh, I'm gonna get stuck here. Like, this is not gonna represent me here. But with this thing we call Ifa, the wisdom of nature, um, and by its universal definition, and expression, every question that I had got answered, and then gave me better questions. And then that got answered, and then it gave me better questions. And so I was like, oh, this will work, right? And so I was fascinated with the cosmology and um, the information, because it just made sense to me. I was never really good at retaining Greek mythology, or even Egyptian mythology, or anything, but the orishas and the way in which they work, and the personification of forces of nature, and the cosmology and the structure of Ifa, or the wisdom of nature, just made sense, right? So I leaned in the way that I would with any creative opportunity. Like, I'll learn more by doing, but just sort of sitting on my hands and thinking about doing. And so that's what I mean. Like, I didn't know how to spell Babala. I didn't know what all of it meant, but I went through the proper rites, and was humbled by all of it, and experientially excited, inspired, and apparently there was some familiarity in being in West Africa. It felt a lot like being in my grandparents' house, although I didn't speak the language. And that began what's now been a 16-year slow walk up and down a mountain and through the woods, towards meeting you all, right? Towards um, integrating and understanding my purpose, where I come from, who I belong to, why I'm here at this time, and how to fulfill that purpose, and how to enjoy every minute of it. Um, And that's where the mindfulness comes in, right? Like, it's exciting to know, but it's something else to embody and really enjoy with grace and with intention. Um, and so that's a long. Every time I'm asked questions like that, I think I give it a different answer. Along the journey, I've also been blessed to uh, develop a space out here in the West Coast, in Seattle, which is, or 40 miles south of Seattle in Auburn, Washington, called Sacred Land Collective. And Sacred Land Collective is 48 acres of land that was blessed to us by the ancestors, that we steward as a wellness and retreat center and ideation institute for Black people to come to rest and dream and imagine and create. We talk about it being a space where we can't eliminate the um, so-called white gaze, but we can make it really small. And we invite people into having relationships to the land. We're just kind of we receive folks so that they can talk to the land, right? Because the land has way better conversation than we do. Um, and I've been here about since 2001, right, somewhat directly after COVID. Uh, and then I'm also an aluo, which means to some degree a teacher within an institute. So I have lots of apprentices and godchildren who I'm responsible. I have the privilege of guiding their spiritual journey so that they can build confidence and character and practice in a real way. I'm very much a village child, so being in community with you all is part of my purpose in being, to identify people of similar conduct, character, and consciousness who are working towards their purpose and giving us medicine and sharing wisdom around how we can do this in a way that is mindful, that is present, that is healthy, that is not extractive. Um, so yeah, so I'm that's sort of a long arc to my background. Classically trained as an artist, very much experientially learning, and will learn for the rest of my life as a priest or wisdom keeper, um, grandchild, uncle, cousin, all the things, and generally lover of life. And for those who may be looking for the championship, anybody who's watching, it's in New York. The Knicks have it, and they'll have it for indefinitely. And I just want to name that as a New Yorker and a Knicks fan. In case you were wondering where the chip was, it's in New York. You're welcome to come visit. It's all good. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. I hope that wasn't too circuitous.
I should have worn my t-shirt. I have a Knicks championship t-shirt next time.
As you should. As you should. Please do. Please do. Yes.
Oh, but thank you for sharing just a portion of that beautiful journey. Uh, a couple of things that stand out to me is you speaking about grief in this sense of that everything is always, I'll use the word transitioning. And some people may refer to that transitioning as dying and being born again, and dying and being born again. And I liken that to nature as well, when we look at the seasons and how the seasons come and go. So I wanted to just ask you, when it comes to those seasons where you had that felt sense of like, this version of me is transitioning or dying, this other version of me now is being born or transitioning into this new phase, what for you was helpful or supportive in you really just standing in that? Because I know you just mentioned too that you're doing your best to really not avoid it, not run away from it, to be with it. So what has been supportive for you during those seasons of transition, death and rebirth of versions of yourself?
It's a great question. And because I am in this period of experience that I guess we were taught was middle age, um, I try to reframe it as like elders in training. Uh, I recognize that my body is getting older, right? And when I experienced loss, tangible loss of or death when I was younger, um, I was in a different body, right? I had different experiences. I was as wise as I was up until that point. But now that I've grown a little older and just developed, just being, 48, my body is yelling at me and telling me, you're not just what you think you are, right? You are definitely what you think you are, but you are also responsible for this physical vessel. Um, and wellness for me is a very am I taking care of the instrument? Am I taking care of my first home? Or am I just moving as if I could move? Am I only fueling my first home the way I fueled it when I was 24, right? Which is grab something, a bagel, blah, 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 I'm chilling, right? But my body's like, nah, that's not it. Um, and it definitely, I don't say yells at me, but I did it recently, um, where are we, in June now? So about 8 months ago, found myself with some unidentifiable autoimmune type. They're still not clear what it is, that affected my joints. Um, and so therefore the swelling or the inflammation, as I've learned, it was the last potential sign of like getting attention, right? I'm sure there was some inflammation in my mind, things that were irritating me that I didn't give myself time to slow down and pay attention to or be mindful of. Inflammation in my spirit to the degree that like I was just sort of normalizing some things in order to be either palpable or just get along or just get on to the next day. Um, but once you get to the body, it's like, all right, so check it out, right? Like we're gonna let you feel this,
Yeah.
and that inflammation was debilitating, um, and it came along the same season when it rains the pours as the loss of some really, 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 really important people to me. Um, And so I couldn't kind of romanticize like, oh, I'm gonna take a minute every day and remember their memory. I was stuck. I was not moving. I was not doing anything. And all I had was to sit with myself, compounded with to feel through whatever was being cracked open in me. And I'm not I have no druthers around tears. I'm a big fan of tears. But beyond the tears, I had to really breathe into the hurt, and I had to I had to learn to nurture myself through it. I had to learn to receive support because I could physically not do what I was used to doing. I wasn't moving the way that I know myself to move. Um, and that was over a few seasons. And so I had to mourn who I thought I was. I assembled, and I'm really grateful, an allopathic team of doctors and officials, and then a spiritual team and more holistic team of acupuncture and massage and Reiki and divination and astrology, right? And they were all reading this, saying the same thing in different kind of ways. Um, that who I thought I was, what I thought it was to grow older, which is to build more capacity to do labor and hold space for people, is not actually what my soul desires. Um, so I am not just my labor. I am not just my capacity to do more. Um, Apparently, my soul wants to be here now, wants to be in the experience, wants me to include myself and honor myself as I become who I'm becoming. And that was transformative for me. And so before I got to the actual external people dying, it was like I have to die to the idea that I'm only as valuable as what I do. Um, and then re-embrace or rewrite. I call it the mixtape. The mixtape of that belief is over. There's no rewind. If I play it one more time, it's gonna snap. Um, but I get to write a new mixtape, informed by all my experiences up to this point and my soul's desire to be a part, to be included in it, and not just be a laborer. And I inherited that from generations of all the things we all know, the sort of legacy of that. Um, but to be able to say, okay, so who am I when I'm not laboring? What is my value when I'm not laboring? How do I be with myself, with others, as foreign as it may seem, I'm used to doing, but how do I be more naturally, right? How do I show up and be okay and accepting of wherever I am without having to do something to impress or to, all the things. And that practice has been my wellness practice, reminding myself that it's not only okay to be, but I denied myself being for so long. I have a right to be present for myself, if nothing else. And then if I can do that, then I can be more present with others, which gives people permission. You both, since meeting you, especially when you all in the same space, have such an embodied practice that your spirit invites people to not only feel comfortable but to relax, right? So I'm chasing y'all's energetic frequency, right? Like, how do I be so present in my being that other people can only exhale, right? So that's sort of where I'm at with the caring for myself through the grief.
That was so. I mean, you just dropped so many gems there, and I know we're going to hand it over for you to share more, but I just really want to highlight, especially for everyone that's listening, because we could keep just putting certain things you said just on repeat. About that you're more than your labor, reflecting on who am I when I'm not doing? What is my value outside of the doing? I think that these are just so so key for us to really sit with these type of reflective questions, because they impact our health and our well-being so much. And so what you just shared, I think, is really, really critical. And on top of that, I really appreciate you for just being very authentic with your experience, because I think that's important for people to be able to see and connect to, knowing that they're going through something and thinking that, like, well, I'm not supposed to be feeling it this way or showing up this way, and then to hear you, because sometimes people have this um, sort of idea that if you're in these realms of like what you do as a healer, as a priest, and then us as mindfulness facilitators, they think that, oh well, those people, they got it all together, and that we're not going through these things. And it's like, no, we're human.
Very
we're
much
human
so.
and
Very much so.
things. So I really just wanted to highlight that, those things that stuck out for me, and to remind everyone that all of us are human and spiritual beings. So we're experiencing these things too, that you're not the only one. So
Yeah, for me, I everything that you've shared, I resonate with, and it's given so much food for thought to reflect on later on. It's like tasting it as it's being cooked, but it's not until everything is done later on that you really get to savor the flavor. So I am looking forward to sitting with um, this as I watch the video later, this video later. But here's something that I want to bring to the table, and I know that you're about to get into your talk, so I'm going to invite you, if it feels good to do this, is to share a little bit about Ifa. If it's a part of what you're going to talk about, um, inviting you to do that, but also for Black folks that are part of the diaspora. This is a spiritual technology that I believe that it's embedded deep. So is there something that you can share? Um, uh, and I'm asking you to go surface because we of the time and those things.
Right.
But is there something that you could share as an introduction to Ifa for our audience?
Happily. Thank you for the invitation. So Ifa, spelled IFA, there's some accents there, is comes from is a Yoruba. It's a Yoruba word. Yoruba is to Ifa what the Yoruba people, which is in Southwest Nigeria currently, is to Ifa what Southern Baptist is to the American South, right? So the region is obviously, in the fabric of the region, is the culture of the people and their beliefs and their religious, or scientific or spiritual practices. So many people are like, oh, you practice Yoruba. I don't practice Yoruba. I practice Ifa, which is the wisdom of nature, which is a science, a spiritual science, that allows us to understand ourselves through an indigenous focus, which is to say, looking at nature. So it translates in Yoruba literally as the wisdom of nature, right? And by wisdom, meaning knowledge and experience. So you can be knowledgeable and very young and not be wise. You can be experienced and not knowledgeable and not be wise. So Ifa, the wisdom of nature, is, from what I understand, the oldest sort of corpus of the ways in which our people have codified the knowledge and experience of what it means to be spiritual beings having a human experience on this planet. And the way in which it's been codified is through what we call Odu Ifa, which is a binary system that computers are actually based on. A brilliant way of encapsulating and holding memory and story and medicine and history and politics and all these things that for the most part is an oral tradition up until recently. But as we are, things got written down and we have lots of books, but still no one can know all of the Odu Ifa. And everything has a energy signature and pattern amongst the 256 possible categories of those patterns. And when you go to get a divination or a reading, the wisdom keeper or priest is using you're getting a diagnostic using and then reading one of those patterns to the best of their capacity, and maybe call an elder and so on and so forth, because no one can know all of it. And those patterns help us to understand the energetic things that are happening with us, for us, to us on the path towards our destiny. So Ifa is a science that helps us to understand how do we at any given intersection of life move towards that which is our purpose. And we still have free will. So once you know, you have a choice, right? You can either lean into it or not. But Ifa is that science, and it comes with culture, and it comes with, because we're not talking about separation of church and state. We're not talking about, we're talking about the fact that ourselves and nature are one. The viewer and the thing being viewed are the same thing, but we all come to the earth to meet nature. So there are things to be learned from it, but it's not a clean slate. There are many before us who've codified what they learned and passed it on to us through the science, the same way that astrology or numerology, or I'm thinking about the esoterics, but like what we consider the hard sciences, biology, all those things are all cumulative arts and sciences, right? We're getting more information and then we pass it on to the next. So the same is true for spiritual sciences. And Ifa is one of the oldest spiritual sciences, but every indigenous people has something that feels, looks, and moves a lot like Ifa. It just so happens that I went through the door of Ifa, but the same is true within many indigenous practices around the world. I hope that wasn't too long.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Well, if you are ready, Baba, we're going to, give you the floor to really just share what it is you would like to with the audience.
Thank you. I think, can you remind me what the bullet points that I put on that I wanted to talk about?
Oh, sure. So I have here grief, wellness, spiritual hygiene, being an elder in training in these times.
Okay, sweet. So we talked a little bit about grief, and I do want to name to everyone who feels like the world is changing in ways that feels awkward and strange and painful and confusing and it's on fire, that you're not wrong. It is. And we are all grieving the tangible and the intangible things. Maybe losing people, maybe having to move from someplace, moving place, maybe losing the illusion of what we thought things were going to be, but they're not. And maybe sometimes losing sense of who we think we are, who we thought we are. And know that as long as we're still breathing and we're still present, that's part of this life contract, right? That we're going to have one door closes, another one opens, blah, blah, blah. But we have the opportunity to hold each other carefully, because you don't know what stage of grief or where people are in their love for this life. Right? We mentioned earlier that love is the opposite side of the coin of grief. You feel the loss because you loved that deeply. And if it wasn't that serious, right, there's some ambiguous losses, loss of opportunity, right? You thought you were going to have a conversation that was going to go really well, and it didn't happen. And so you have to kind of grieve what could have been. You ran out of time for something at the end of a very long day, and you didn't do the thing that you said, the one thing you wanted to do that day, that everything got so full. You have to grieve the loss of that opportunity. You don't have the relationship with the person that you really, really wanted to have that relationship with, whatever the connotation, and you grieve the thing that you know is possible, but it's not happening right now. So grief isn't always like somebody died, but on top of that, people are departing. Right? People are completing their mission. So then we have the more acceptable, like who died, right? And people are like, oh, I'm so sorry for as long as they can hold it, and then you're again there with your own relationship to it. So we are grieving a world that is changing and transforming and evolving and becoming. We are grieving missed opportunities. We are grieving. And the more that we can grieve, the more that we can carry the medicine of those experiences with us. If we deny grief as a process, or if we try to control it, or if we say, I don't want to feel that way, that's nice, right? But if I stub my toe, I don't want to say ouch, but it hurts, right? So I don't want anybody, I don't want to disturb the peace and say and scream, but it's happening, right? So you can focus on what you don't want, or you can understand that things are happening so that you can experience them and learn from them, right? And grief teaches us how to do this spirit dance, how to take every medicine, every wisdom, every memory, every loss, every anger to fuel the fact that we're still very much living. We're still here to breathe and feel it. So that's the grief piece. The wellness is how you take care of yourself, right? Which we talked about, right? How are you taking care of yourself in between? So you have a therapist, you have a exercise routine. You know what I'm saying? You're feeling good about yourself, and when you leave the therapy office, and when you get in the car, somebody cuts you off, and everything you talked about in therapy goes out the window. Right? So how do you care for yourself in between these things that you've set up to to know that you're, you know, doing a good job at being yourself? One of my biggest loss this year um, was my my best friend. Um, Her name was Kendall Johnson Smith. Ia Fashewa Kendall Johnson Smith. She was a therapist. She was a priest. She was an artist. She was a teacher. She was my person in that she didn't think my processing was too much, and if she did, she didn't tell me to my face. um, but we practiced together, um, embodying pieces of medicine and wisdom, um, and not just like, oh, I found this new really cool thing. I had this really cool experience, but like, I think there's medicine here. I think this is going to help me, in my case, or she would say in her case, um, become more myself, right? And so we would practice together, and we would step on each other's toes a lot, right? Because that's what happens when you're practicing. But we got better at practicing, and so for about 20 years, we were practicing, and it wasn't. Maybe people will be like, "Oh, they must have been dating," and blah blah blah. There was stages of romance and stages of other things. Sometimes we were administrators together, organizers together, all the things. But what we committed to was that spirit brought us together because we were able to practice together. And so to lose someone who was your dance partner, let's say, is really, really um, challenging because you were just used to, you know, I have many dance partners, many relationships, many people that I'm in this world, including the both of you. Um, and to lose a dance partner in the physical, um, whose focus was around wellness. She actually had a book titled Wellness, which helps people in the in-between spaces. What are your sources of wellness? What do you need at any given moment to ground yourself and remember that you can be responsible for your own wellness? And it's not a perfect thing, right? Um, Depending on where you are in your wellness, like, have you eaten? Did you sleep? Are you hungry? Do you need some honey? Do you need to take a breath? Do you need to listen to music? What is going to remind you to be more mindful? Um, that was her wheelhouse, and she did it for young people especially. It just as a personal, but she also did it for major institutions. Um, Institutions who are looking for a sort of HR or mental health type framework to help the environment of their institution. And we work together building um, spiritual environments that allow people to feel seen, heard, and understood as they explore their own practice and practicing. And so she was very dear to me. And I feel as if when she transitioned and I accepted it, which I'm every day learning to accept more, I don't fear death, but the acceptance is a thing. I negotiate a lot. But the more that I embrace it, the more that I recognize that the gift that she left me was to be mindful of my own wellness. And what I hope to share with you all is, while wellness isn't a thing you can go in the grocery store and grab your version, what it means for you to be well means you have to know when you're unwell. You have to be able to recognize, feel, understand, trust people who see you and care for you and believe in you, and want you to be well. And then you have to decide how much you're going to commit to, which will take me to the next thing, to your spiritual hygiene. Right? So if you brush your teeth every morning, hopefully everyone does, but know that not everyone does, for reasons that are, we're talking about like in the world, then you can have confidence that your conversations are going to be, are not going to be blowing hot air on people, right? And that's your hygiene, right? And when you were a kid, maybe your parents, had to remind you to brush your teeth because it was just something new, because you were used to whatever the case may be, right? So any new technology or any new practice, you have to give yourself grace with that. But the same way that we have health and sort of beauty hygiene or those things, kind of things, more so because, so that we can be palpable, so that we can feel confident, so that we can, be amongst the people. Right? There's some days you're like, I'm not doing none of this. Right? So the same is true for spiritual hygiene, right? Well, how are you keeping your spirit fresh and renewed and present, and not getting too much in your head, right? How are you using these technologies, whether it be libation or whether it be spiritual baths or whether it be meditation? How are you using these ways to keep you cleansed? I think I heard something about the Dalai Lama had mentioned, was like, it's very basic. It was like, you will get dirty, like your cloth will get dirty because you're working through the world, right? A cloth being like your experience, right? But it starts clean because we're all spiritual beings having human experience here to the thing. But it will get dirty, and there are washing machines, right? So like, how are you cleaning that cloth, right? Not like sit on a mountaintop for 20 years, but like, how are you daily making sure you're not wearing the cloth from yesterday that needed to get washed, right? So that's wellness, right? How are you mining your, based on the environments that you're in? So that's individual. If I work, in a really dusty area, I may need a different wellness regimen when I come home and clean myself off. If I work in a place that's near water, I may need something else to get the salt, whatever it is, right? You have to know yourself and then pay attention to those wellness practices. And they're usually not as complex as we think, right? Sometimes it's just taking a pause and not just going to the next thing. As you mentioned earlier about what we're working on this month, or this season rather. And doing it with other people helps, knowing that you're not the only person doing it. Remember when we went to school and like everybody had to do this stuff together, like kindergarten stuff, right? Like everybody go over here, right? There's something about knowing that it wasn't just you, it was everybody was learning to do this together. And so as we evolve, we're learning these practices, these ways of being together. And the fact that you all hold this space for people to come back to and maybe even sit down and view together, right? But definitely be like, did you see that episode? Did you hear what they were talking about? That's just as important as taking the time on your way to work or wherever you're listening or hearing this, to be in conversation, to be in community, to be in village around how this medicine is being digested, right? Because we don't do the work that we do to hear ourselves speak. We do it because we're human, we're spiritual beings having human experience, and we found that it helps us to feel more ourselves and be more present. So we want to share that. But we're also in active dialectical dialogue, right? So if you find something based on something that if you go to pour libation, you're like, wait, I know another way. That's part of the conversation, right? That's part that will evolve the technology, right? So we want to be careful of putting people on pedestals who know, right? They have the show, they're meditative, right? No, we wake up, we put our pants on one leg at a time, and we practice, right? And we invite people to practice, and those who practice get better at being practiced. Right? So if you choose to develop your practice, know that you're not far behind. There's no competition. You're just in where you. And we remember, because when we stop practicing, we got to start again. Right? So as experienced as you are, there is muscle memory, but like when you're not practicing, you're not practicing, which means you have to start practicing again. So everybody who starts practicing is at the same place, right? Um, and you're just more comfortable with your practice, but that doesn't mean that you're better off because you've been practicing for. And I think you get the message. So within wellness, that's important. Now this elders in training piece, right? So middle aged, I didn't know it was gonna feel like this. Like I really, I think we talk a lot about being young, the Peter Pan thing, and then we talk about growing old and being elders, especially those of us that were raised by our elders. But there isn't a lot of conversation about that space in between, and I'm realizing that we're all having similar experiences, but not talking about it, especially if you're Generation X, because we don't talk about it, we just do, right? So I really want to embrace and initiate or set the pace, or at least get it out there that sure we're middle aged, but we're also elders in training, right? We are a bridge generation, uniquely placed. Some of us didn't have children the way that they expected us to. Some of us were latchkey kids. Some of us remember a time before cell phones. Some of us, right? I'm talking about a very specific space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of us lived through the chemical warfare they call the war on drugs. Some of us, right? Sorry, I got a phone call, and I don't want to play with my phone too much to turn that off because I don't want to lose you all. We have lived long enough to grow wise enough, or to see the wisdom of our elders, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have gotten to an age where we're like, oh, what they told us to keep in our pocket when we were like teenagers, now it's maturity. Right now I understand, right? And for those of us that still have elders in our community or even in our families, I imagine that they can't really rest well as elders if they don't have conversation with us to know that we have integrated the things that they sacrificed to teach us. And so that's where the whole idea of elders in training comes from, because I think we're very active. We're very doing the things, holding the podcast, having the conversations. And I want to localize it to men's work. There's a lot of men's work that is emerging that's necessary, and I'm very excited for it. But it's amongst peers of mine or comrades of mine, not all of which have the healthiest relationships with their elders. So they're kind of trying to provide for those younger than them or their peers the things that they didn't have. But when we take away the personal, my dad wasn't there, or I don't really mess with this dude, blah, 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 so I'm gonna do better. And we think about what the village provides us. It may not be your biological, or it may not be the person that you have the healthiest relationship with, but there are elder examples for brothers who are doing the thing, right? Who are gracefully vintaging, like who are some bosses, right? And so if we can think about being trained towards eldership and sitting at the feet of our elders, who for us, 70 plus, right? And I'm blessed because the person who taught me how to read is my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and made it so that I skipped kindergarten, is still with us. So she's 102 years old, right? Mm. So I have a very special relationship to making sure that I.
Oh. He'll come back. Because yeah, he's still connected. Somebody may have called in. Oh, you gonna pause it? Okay. All right, it's recording.
We're back.
Okay, so sorry for that brief interruption. So my grandmother's 102 years old. I have a special affinity for elders, and I think we all should, all those who are in this middle-aged space, so that we can gracefully become the things that we admire and the things that sacrifice for us. So that's the whole elders in training space. So, if that's something that's interesting to you, continue the conversation, holler at me. How you can find me are a few different spaces, both in person and in the digital space. So my website is currently being revamped. So we're not going to go there, but If you would like to get a hold of me, you can reach me at ciartshealing@gmail.com. If you'd like to be part of the listserv to get information about events and things that are opportunities that I'm facilitating or my organizations are facilitating, you can just send an email to ciartshealing and say, please add me to the village listserv. If you're in the Pacific Northwest or need a place to rest, ideate, reflect, have conversation with land, check out sacredlandcollective.org, sacredlandcollective.org, one word. On IG, it's sacred_land_collective. Hit us up in the DMs. I'm the community navigator and spiritual director or wisdom keeper for the organization. There's a small group of us that are amazing. Um, and please come out if you're in the region. If you're outside this summer, there's a few things coming up that I will be privileged to be able to contribute to and be a part of. One is at Soul Fire Farms. There is a food, capoeira, and farming event that is being facilitated by my brethren, Taganyahu. This will be at upstate New York, Soul Fire Farms. It'll also be in the follow-up newsletter, so you can, and that's the weekend of Labor Day. Like the 4th, 5th, and 6th, I want to say. Maybe just the 4th and 5th, something like that, of September. Also, if you're familiar with Karen Rose, Empress Karen Rose's Spiritual Herbalism Conference, that is happening in October. Check out, just Google Sacred Vibes Spiritual Herbalism Conference. I have been blessed with my sister Karen Rose to be able to, this is our 9th year of that effort. It will be in Brooklyn. It's hybrid. It's a really beautiful experience for those who are look at wellness and healing and herbalism from a spiritual lens. And this year's special guest is a wonderful artist and creator on IG known as Know Your Caribbean. So we'll be talking about Mass, and we're talking about the divine feminine and the mysteries of the divine feminine as thematically, which I'm really excited about. So that'll be in October. And then this piece I really want to highlight. The next piece, there is an effort happening, a conference happening in Charleston, South Carolina, that begins October 30th and goes through November 7th. It's 7 days. And this is the 500-year anniversary of Black Atlantic Africans being kidnapped and transported and trafficked to the shores of Turtle Island, of this land that we call United States. And the Charleston, South Carolina port, under the British colonial rule, was the largest port for the either extraction of or the importation of many bodies. And once the Spanish passed on their foolishness to the English, it remained a high traffic port that the triangle trade brought in folks from the Caribbean, from West Africa, from Europe, and not just brought in, but took people out. So this port, they say, is the space where 40 to 50% of those who identify as phenotypically or genetically Black Indian, African American, Gullah Geechee, if you got people in the Low Country area, or you can trace yourself back to Low Country or to the Caribbean, it's through this port that we become all cousins. And so we are having a intentional conference about the fact that the water, the thing that carried us, and some of our ancestors jumped into, and some of us died under, and some of us, the water is calling us all home. And by all, we mean anyone connected. So no matter what practice you currently rock, right? So there'll be some AME representation, there'll be Black Indians, there'll be Native Americans, there'll be ATR practitioners, there'll be locals, there'll be Gullah Geechee, there'll be all types of individuals who understand that that the water, which holds memory, is asking of all of us to return to honor those who have come before us, but also to begin to think about the ways in which ancestral healing and